If you want to see what holding power to account really looks like, watch what happens when Deborah Ross forces Kash Patel to answer for the FBI he built.
I'm going a little out of order here because I'm going to pursue some of the things that you were just talking to Mr. Fry about and remind you about your confirmation hearing. At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law. And every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." So I want to just go through a couple scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed, that's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia. because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentleladies.
What you're seeing in this exchange is a member of Congress walking into a hearing not just with questions, but with receipts, with documentation, and with a level of preparation that completely changes the dynamic in the room. Deborah Ross doesn't start with accusations, she starts with Kash Patel's own words, the promises he made under oath during his confirmation hearing. And that's deliberate. She's saying, I'm not holding you to my standard, I'm holding you to the standard you gave the country. And once she lays that foundation, the entire tone shifts. Because Patel can't escape his own record. He can't claim misunderstanding, he can't claim partisan spin, the commitments were his. He promised no politicization, no retaliatory firings, no purges tied to political loyalty. He promised personnel decisions based only on performance and adherence to the law. That's not vague. That's not open to interpretation. That's a clear standard. And then Ross begins doing something that is so important for viewers to understand. She walks him, step by step, through real-world scenarios that match the exact behavior he promised would never happen. She's not speculating, she's not imagining hypotheticals, she's pointing to documented cases, lawsuits, statements, career histories, and she's forcing Patel to confront the gap between what he told the Senate and what his FBI has actually done. Patel tries to wiggle out in the most predictable way. First, he gives the policy answer. We don't ask applicants who they voted for. But then Ross immediately points to litigation where people inside the Bureau say the opposite happened. That's the thing about hearings. Policies don't matter if the practice violates them. And Patel's fallback defense, hiding behind ongoing litigation, only underscores the point. If he can't deny it and won't explain it, then something is wrong. But the real weight of Ross's argument comes from the people she names. She doesn't let this be abstract. She names former acting director Brian Driscoll, a 20-year veteran, Medal of Valor recipient, a leader in critical incident response. She names Steve Jensen, an experienced counterterrorism and counterintelligence agent. She names Walter Jardia, a decorated combat veteran who investigated Russian interference and January 6th. These aren't random employees. These are the kind of people the FBI traditionally fights to keep, the backbone of major national security operations. And what do they have in common? They worked on politically sensitive cases. They worked on January 6th. They worked on Russian interference. They worked on investigations that Trump and his allies didn't like. And suddenly, during Patel's tenure, they were gone. That's not coincidence, that's a pattern. And patterns matter because they reveal motive. Ross is making a point here that goes beyond politics. She's exposing how institutional independence erodes. When agents start believing that their careers rise or fall based on who their investigations might upset, rather than on whether they did their jobs well, the entire purpose of an investigative agency collapses. The FBI cannot function if loyalty to political figures is treated as more important than loyalty to the law. And Ross drives that home by saying the quiet part out loud. Patel isn't running the FBI for the American people. He's running it to stay in good standing with the president. That is one of the most serious accusations you can make in a hearing. She's saying he has reshaped the Bureau not around justice, but around job security, around appeasing political forces, around preserving his position. And the devastating part is that she backs it all up. These aren't rumors, these are lawsuits, public records, named individuals with decades of service. This is why she tells him he has flunked his own test. Because his promises were clear, his actions have been documented, and the two do not match. This entire exchange teaches something critical for viewers. Oversight only works when people like Ross come prepared with facts, not sound bites. And it reminds us that institutions don't lose integrity in one dramatic moment. They lose it through small, consistent acts of political pressure, purges, and fear that slowly reshape the culture from the inside. That's why this moment matters. It's not about a single firing or a single lawsuit. It's about whether one of the most powerful agencies in the country is operating on the rule of law or the rule of loyalty tests. And if it's the latter, the consequences aren't just political, they are national security risks. For more breakdowns like this, the kind that cut through the noise and explain what's actually happening beneath the surface, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Left Lens. Because the stakes are too high to settle for shallow coverage. We're here to expose the deeper story.